The reason why they tried so hard to break you down is because that's the only way that they can get away with whatever it is that they want to do to you. Whatever is in their agenda. There's a certain thing, there's a certain plot. And in order to fulfill that, they have to make sure that they break you down, but they don't want to necessarily take you out, at least not yet. But they want to keep you alive, but not feeling alive. You know what I mean? That right there is what abusers, what covert narcissists, these type of people, that is what they do. You know, they don't want to necessarily, you know, like I said, they don't want to necessarily unalive you just yet. They only want to get rid of you when they've already done enough damage and stuff like that. But most of what they do is just a way to induce fear and anxiety to keep you under their control, under their grasp. Everything that they do when it comes to manipulating the way you perceive reality and yourself, when it comes to controlling your emotions, they only do that, you know, to make sure that you remain complacent under their system and under, you know, whatever system we're talking about. I mean, it's not just a house, it's not just a toxic household, toxic workplace relationship, but even this broken society as a whole. So you can look at this thing in many different aspects, and honestly, man, it's crazy how this shit is everywhere, but most people are not aware of it. You know, only a few people are really awakened to how these things are going on and how it has kept many people in mental imprisonment and spiritual bondage. And it's a very powerful it's a very powerful thing when you're a person that was blessed enough to awaken from these things, from these systems of control, you know. So definitely consider yourself blessed, but at the same time, I understand that it can feel like a curse at times, because you might be the type of person that wants to, you know, inform people and open their eyes and help them out. But, you know, there's people that, you know, they're so far gone that they start to look at the messenger as an enemy. You know, they start to look at, because they misunderstand the messenger, then now they think the messenger is trying to bring problems to a thing that they see. Some people, let me put it to you like this, some people have grown so accustomed to being enslaved that when you tell them that they're enslaved or imprisoned, they get offended. You know, how dare you? But unfortunately, most people have become that way and they don't even realize it. You know, it's kind of like a good example. This is a perfect example. When you know someone is in an abusive relationship and you try to inform the victim that, hey, you know what's going on, right? Because you can see it. That person, right, that victim is actually going to turn against you. Not because, you know, some people misunderstand this and stuff like that. That's where they go into victim blaming, but that's because they don't understand the level of mind control that the victim was placed under. They don't understand Stockholm syndrome, and also in some cases the victim is actually very, very attached to their abuser in such a deep way that it's very almost impossible to break, and that is what you call a trauma bond. You know, this person actually believes in the lies of their abuser. They believe that they're in love with this person, not realizing you're actually just simply trauma bonded to them. You don't even know what love is, because this person is not, they don't love you, you know, but they don't understand that, because what they're receiving from their abuser is the closest thing to love, even though it's not. That just shows how much they've been deprived of love, you know, and that's what we're looking at. And if you're somebody that is spiritually awakened and you can see these things and you have good intentions, you care about this person, but then you see that you're telling them what it is, you know, and they might get mad at you. They might, you know, they'll get upset, and then you might lose contact with them, because, you know, they're going to think you're trying to ruin their relationship, even though their relationship is actually ruining the victim, you know. And this is one of the most difficult things to experience as a person that knows these things, that can see, because you want to save people. You want to save and help as many people as you can, and it might be some people that you care about and you can clearly see what's happening, and unfortunately they don't see it. It just shows how unawakened they are. So like I said, you just look at it look at it through a compassionate lens as far as the victim goes, because man, it just shows how deep the manipulation really is, how deep the mind control is. And don't take it personal when the victim is, upset with you, because they don't know. They're that mind control. They're that far gone that they don't even understand that you're trying to help them, and the person that they're with or that they're involved with is abusive, and like I said, I painted the picture of an abusive relationship in this scenario, but you can apply this to anything, man. You can apply it to like I said, a toxic workplace, toxic family, toxic toxic system overall. You can try to tell people these things, and again, if they're not spiritually awakened, they're not going to see eye to eye. And I understand we have different opinions. We're not going to agree with everything, but one thing is for sure is that, corruption and evil, it runs rampant, and it doesn't miss anybody that is open to spreading that evil. The evil entities, they waste no time to jump into any vessel that is open and willing to participate in the destruction of people, places, and things, So, with that being said, I want to say that, abusers, they hate your magnetism, they hate your self-love, spiritual sovereignty, and anything that has to do with a sense of empowerment, all these things. And see, they break you down because, again, like I said, they don't necessarily want to take you out just yet, but for the most part, they want to keep you alive enough to serve them, And you could clearly see this in playing out with the system and stuff like that, with society and the rat race, and they want to keep you with just enough life to do what you need to do for them and not for yourself. They don't want you to have time for yourself. Just like an abusive partner, you see the same dynamic is playing. It's like they don't want you to have time for yourself, time to invest into yourself, do what you love and really enrich your spirit. They don't want you to have that. They want you to only live to serve them only, and that's the same thing. You see, what makes you magnetic is when you take time for yourself, when you do what you need to do to practice self-care and all these different things, your creative hobbies, doing things you love overall. But see, when you're living in a type of environment where your soul is being sucked out of you in whatever way that looks like for you, and it could be in various places. I mean, you have so many people. You have people that are in miserable relationships, miserable jobs. Then you have the so-called society they live in that is highly narcissistic. People are just shitty. Or in general, you have all these things put it together. It's gonna basically cause the soul to wither slowly, and add past traumas on top of that, add past heartbreaks, chronic pain, chronic emotional pain. You put it all together, it's just a big concoction of suffering and all types of stuff, and that's going to cause you to feel like you're losing yourself, and it's gonna kind of, it's in a way, it's like a slow kill, it's like you're slowly feeling like you're eroding into nothing, and that's a sad feeling. That's depression. People get depressed when they don't know how to heal from these things, and sometimes you could get so overwhelmed by so many things that you've experienced that it can really take a toll on you to the point you're just like, fuck it. One thing I would say is that abusers, they hate, abusers hate when you awaken to these things, when you awaken to how they've been siphoning your energy all these years. They hate your sovereignty, your ability to detach from the trauma, from being trauma bonded to them. They hate the fact that, they know that you have the potential to attract a lot of great things, opportunities, and people. There are good people out here. It's just that they're scattered and isolated from one another. And so your abusers are hoping that you never find a good place or a good person for you in your life. You know, like I said, they can see everything that you can do with yourself. They can see all the great potential and all these wonderful talents. Oh, don't let you be talented and creative. Oh yeah, and intellectual, spiritual, put it all together. And also, you know, good looking. Oh no, they have to keep you down. It's like the more you have to offer, the more they want to break you down, the more they want to abuse you. That's how they think. So you might think to yourself, whenever you're looking back at all the times that you've been abused in whatever setting we're talking about, you might think like, man, you start to feel shitty, like, you know, I must really not be shit if they treated me like that. You know, you might feel like, oh, you might feel like you're ugly because, oh, the way they treated me, they just made me feel like I'm so ugly, like I'm nothing, like I'm worthless. No, you have to think about it. If you really think about it, really listen to me right now. All the stuff they did to you, all the abuse, the breaking you down and all that, that's a reflection on how much they saw that you had to offer, how much greatness that is inside of you, that it made them want to really destroy you, because they don't want you to ever see that, because they don't want you to fulfill that. They don't want you to, you know, excel in any area of life, because these people are empty vessels. And when they see a person, right, that has all these things and they don't have that, so what they have to do is convince you that you're nothing, when in reality, the covert narcissists are the ones that are nothing. The abusers are the ones who have always been nothing. And they try to convince you, they try to convince us that we are what they are, you know. And so, again, that right there, they broke you. You see, a person, like I said, a person is not going to try to break down a person that has nothing to break down. You get what I mean? Like, the more you have to offer, that in their eyes, in the eyes of abusive people, they look at it as there's more to break down. And it's fun to them. They like to, because they like demolishing spirits. You know, they like to destroy people. So again, the more you have going on, the more they have to work on to destroy, basically. And that excites them. That's why they like to go after high caliber individuals in whatever area we're looking at, you know, especially money, right? But not just money, even spirit. You'll be surprised. Some people don't have money like that, but they really, really like to destroy people that have a lot of, you know, that are like deep thinkers, spiritual people, intellectual, and very, very emotionally intelligent people that have the capacity to love, people that have a lot of substance inside, basically, because that's really, I mean, there's a lot of richness in that, you know. That person has a lot, you know. And these people that are emotional vampires, they know that. And so, like, when they see that, they see somebody that has qualities that they don't have, that they never will have, because for whatever reason they're incapable of having these things, because they're so fixated on destroying people. They've chosen the path of destruction, and in that same process, as they continue on to destroy people, the only thing that it's going to lead to is their own self-destruction in the end. And just like I said, you know, they will be destroyed by their own evil. So there's no need to go after them at all, because all it's going to do is going to cause you to be sucked into their abyss of nothingness, and you don't want that. And again, a lot of people, they're not going to understand that, and I understand. But for those who do, you definitely know exactly what I'm talking about. So again, keep in mind that all these times that your abusers, you're the covert narcissists of your life, you know, they have treated you the way they did, not because you're worthless or you're not attractive or you're this and that. Whatever the lies they told you is not because of that. It's actually the opposite. They did all that because they hate the fact that you carry this magnetism, this self-love, and you have this powerful light inside that they will never have, because again, they have chosen the path of destruction. So they're incapable of forming those things that you already have naturally, because you have stood true to your path, and they hate that. So the only thing they can do is try to disrupt whatever you have going on. you know, and they want to break you down in every way that they can so that they can control you. When you look at narcissistic parents and the dynamic of how they groom their children to basically become like their personal little butler, personal maid and stuff like that, it's like when you think of a butler and a maid, it's like they hardly ever truly interact with the person that is supposedly in the owner of the house, you know, the owner of the mansion, whatever, you know. It's like they think they're above you. They don't have to acknowledge you. You're just there to stand there and serve them, you know. You serve them the little tea or whatever the fuck you serve, whatever they want, right? And then they talk to you crazy, and you're supposed to sit there and just take it. You're supposed to sit there and just be okay with it and still give them whatever they want, you know, without saying a word, you know, unless you speak only when spoken to, right? Because they don't care about what you have to say. That right there is an abusive person. That right there is a narcissist. That is a narcissistic abusive person that you're dealing with. And there's people that have had parents like that, whether it's parents, step parents, foster parents, whatever caregiver that was around you at, you know, that treated you in that way in your childhood. You know exactly what that is. You could be cleaning the house, you clean the house, you do everything, and guess what, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, nothing is appreciated, even though as a child it's really not your job to be doing all that, to be honest. I mean, you can, like I said, parents can teach their kids, you know, things like that, give them, you know, responsibilities and stuff like that, but there's a certain point where it becomes like, I guess you could say it becomes draining when they're not giving you that love, when they're not reciprocating that appreciation for all the stuff that you're doing around the house, you know. And I know that in some cultures it's like they just expect us to do it, especially, you know, when it's women, you know, expected to do that. There's nothing wrong with cleaning, there's nothing wrong with teaching your kids responsibility, but you have to, you know, reciprocate that appreciation, because essentially what you're doing is you're teaching your daughters to accept one-sided connections. You know, you're teaching your daughters to, you know, hey, this is your place, you know what I mean, and don't expect no love from anyone as you do all this work. You see what I mean? So that's what I'm talking about. That's what makes it toxic, because it's creating this thing where you're training them to accept one-sided kind of connections and dynamics. And that essentially translates into not only how they're going to be in relationships when they get older, or friendships, but even in systems, so-called society, so-called workplace, where you're doing all this work and you're not getting no type of not just appreciation, but you're not being properly compensated. You know, the whole dynamic of how narcissistic parents shape the way that you expect to be treated by others and by society at large, you know. And it's really sad. It's really sad when if you're that child, you know, whether you're a man or a woman, if you were that child to a narcissistic parent, and, you know, again, that narcissistic parent, they treated you like a maid or like a butler, and they never gave you love. You know, you gave them everything. You gave them everything that they were supposed to give you. They were supposed to nurture you. They were supposed to comfort you, but no, they expected you to do all of that stuff, not only to serve them, but, you know, you're the labor of the house on top of that. You know, now, again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with doing chores, but it's one thing to do that, and it's another thing to use your children as personal servants, and then not even giving them the love and respect and appreciation, and, you know, that they deserve. In some cases, some of you guys have been verbally abused a lot of times, you know, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and in some cases even physical for some people, man. And it goes even further in some cases, you know. It's really fucked up, but that is what these soulless creatures do, you know. So again, you have to remember to take care of yourself, you know. Keep taking care of yourself, and you have got to deprogram from those thoughts that they planted into your mind, you know. You have to basically it's like you remember, you can't help but remember the things that happened to you, but you change the way you perceive it, you know. Because see, the narcissist of your life, they're going to try to control the way that you perceive the things that happen to you. They're gonna, because again, they want to justify their malicious acts. So they're gonna try to say that because you deserved it. That's the biggest thing right there, is that these abusive people in whatever area we're looking at, whether it's an abusive relationship, abusive family, or abusive workplace. They're gonna always scapegoat you, and they're gonna blame shift. They're gonna always say that it's because you deserved it. They're gonna always find a way to justify. Like I said, instead of them taking accountability for their evil actions, they want to justify it by saying that you deserved it. Oh yeah, you deserved it, but they don't really tell you what you did to deserve it. They don't really go into details, and if they do, it's a false narrative. It's fake. It's not real. They'll literally, or they'll fabricate conflict to make it seem like you did something, you incited this thing. That is why a lot of people talk about reactive abuse and why you should not react to these narcissists, because they will use your reaction against you, even though it's basically a response against their abuse. They're gonna flip it and they're gonna convince people that you're the one who's abusive, or you're the one that's the problem, when in reality we all know that it's basically the covert narcissist that is behind all of this. It's everywhere, just about. And understanding how these things work, and understanding and being able to detect who are the covert narcissists around us is very important, because once you see the tactics like before your very eyes, once you see, oh yeah, I know that's a lie, yeah, I know that's a deception, once you have that razor sharp discernment, it's gonna really save you so much. It's gonna save you so much energy and stress, because now you know who is the liar, who's the one sowing seeds of discord. You're going to understand that, and you're gonna see them for who they are, so then they don't have power over you. All those games they play, it will have no effect on you, because you know what they're doing. And when you know what's being done to you, then it has no power. Just like witchcraft, same thing. Manipulation is a form of witchcraft. And guess what happens when you know that someone's doing witchcraft on you? It loses its effect, because you already know what it is. And so when you know what it is, you know how to act accordingly, in the spiritual and psychological way. And so another thing too is that you have to understand that all these things that you've been through, right? It literally it has a lot to do with the fact that you definitely had something unique about you. You have something powerful, and they want to neutralize your power, and they want to rob you of your sovereignty, so that, again, they want to turn you into a slave. This whole life, this whole so-called life, right? This whole battlefield that we're in, right? All this spiritual warfare, it's all because Diablo wants to take control of your soul by way of enslaving you. He wants to enslave you, right? And the way they do that is by breaking you down. The whole process of being broke, them trying to break you down throughout your life from the very beginning. It's really because that's how bad they want your soul. And the only way they can do that is by breaking you down mentally, psychologically, and all kinds of ways, until you finally forfeit the gift of eternal life, until you finally decide that when you start believing in the lies of the devil, you're going to start to think that you belong to the darkness, when you actually don't. The devil wants to convince you so badly that you're not worthy of God. Diablo is the accuser spirit. And a lot of religious spirits are basically what? Accuser spirits. They accuse you of all this stuff. And what's crazy is that they'll accuse you of stuff that you didn't even do. They did the same thing to Yeshua, so what makes you think they won't do it to you? We already know this. We heard this so many times. So many people have said that, And that's what they do. So keep that in mind. It's a crazy world, and you have to have a good head on your shoulders as you continue to walk, especially you walk the narrow path. You have to recognize who you are, and by having your own sense of, when you have your own sovereignty, you know who you are. That is a very powerful thing to have, because they're going to try to tell you who you are. They're going to try to force a false identity and a false narrative on you, just so that they can run away from accountability. But the truth is that you need to recognize your value right now. The fact that you're a very valuable person, and these soulless creatures, they try their very best to make sure that you never find that out. You have to ask yourself, why do they go so hard against you? Why did they keep attacking you? People don't try to rob from someone who has nothing. People don't try to break someone down if they were already put together. You know, you were all put together. You had it all going. You had everything. Even with the wounds, you know, because sometimes people can't see the wounds. You know, you could have a lot of wounds, but they're invisible because you heal so well. You know how to heal yourself through the Most High God. You'll know how to do so many great things. And a lot of people might think, damn, you know, this person is so radiant. They might not even imagine that you've been through what you've been through, you know, but it shows through your resilience. And when these people, you know, they mistake you for an easy target, they're going to be in for a rude awakening when they realize that you're very intelligent, you're very sharp, and you're very spiritually protected as well, you know, and you can see these things. And now they're like, oh shit, you know, they didn't expect that. But that's a beautiful thing, right? That's a beautiful thing. So yeah, always remember that, you know, remember that. So when they try to make it seem like, oh, they're beating you down because you're worthless. No, a person does not attempt to beat down something that's already worthless. You know, what sense does it make for me to wreck a car that's already wrecked? You know what I mean? The fact that they're wrecking you or trying to break you down is because you're very hard to kill. That's what the truth is. You're very hard to kill because you're incredibly resilient and you're fucking amazing. And that's what you have to remember always and forever. And just keep walking in the path that is, or, you know, keep walking in your path and remain strong. But also, you know, be open to receive your blessings that come along in that path as well, you know. And remember to take good care of yourself and get some rest when you need to. And that's the message for today. I thank you so much for listening. Much love to everyone. Take care and God bless.